on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Friday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank in Seattle City. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. Josh Hennig hanging out with you here in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Sixers basketball on your radio tonight. 7:30 p.m. is the tip here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis on the call. We'll be talking Ben Simmons, Sixers and NBA coming up at 6:20 today with the man, the myth, the legend, Brandon Scoopy Robinson, NBA insider for Bally Sports. He will join us coming up at 6:20 as the Simmons stuff takes another turn. So we'll get into all of that with him coming up at 6:20. I'll give you my thoughts on the situation. Also, we'll get to the latest Eagles news as Sirianni made a very important announcement today to the media when he spoke to the media. So we'll get to that as well. And of course, we always love to hear from you guys. Text board is open at 609-403-0970. Priority messaging into the show. DM us through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. You get prioritized on the message list to get in and talk to us on the show. Of course, you get all the updates of some of the things I am going to talk about today throughout the day. Now, for those of you who didn't see the news earlier today, we will get to the Eagles stuff first before we get to the Ben Simmons stuff. But earlier today, Nick Sirianni announced that the Eagles are going to have Lane Johnson back. And that the expectation is he will play right tackle. So this is a huge piece of news for him because you have a guy in Lane Johnson who I know he's getting older, but he's only 31 years old. He's not old, okay? Lane Johnson is still one of the best right tackles in the entire league. Lane Johnson is still a difference maker for this team. And now you get him back at right tackle. You can kick Mailata back to left. Not that Dillard was playing bad, but Mailata is still better than Andre Dillard at this point in time. So you want Mailata over at the left tackle position and Lane at right tackle. Now, with that in mind, your offensive line is arguably going to be the best version of itself that we have seen in weeks. I would argue maybe even week 1 or week 2. You have a situation where Lane Johnson is that important to this team. We've seen over the years that Lane Johnson is that much of a difference maker for this team, for this organization. And I don't think it can be emphasized enough that with Lane on the field, it allows you to do more things. And if I'm Jalen Hurts, I feel a lot better with Lane Johnson at right tackle than anybody else. Nothing against Driscoll. Nothing against Jordan Mailata. Swapping my names all over the place here. There's so many guys who play the offensive line at this point in the last 2 years. But now you go from left to right. You got Mailata at left tackle. Landon Dickerson at left guard. He's looked a lot better at left guard than right guard. Kelsey, the stabilizer at center. Then you get Driscoll, who's played very well on the right side of the line at right guard, and then Lane Johnson. Like I said, this is going to be the best version of this team on the line that we have seen in a while. And I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Now, it's no guarantee that you're going to win the game on Sunday, but it's at least putting you in the right direction because as long as Lane is in a good place and everything's all good, the Eagles' schedule does play out for them. They do have a schedule that, as we've mentioned here on 97.3 ESPN, there are plenty of winnable games. The Raiders are probably, they're not a 50-50 game, but maybe you have like a 40 to 45% chance of winning. The Detroit game, that's like a 90 percentile. The Chargers are coming to Philadelphia, so that's probably a 50-50. You go to Denver, that's probably a 50-50, especially if we see the Denver team that we saw last night. If Philly sees the team that we saw from Denver last night in Cleveland, Philly can beat that team. New Orleans comes to you. They've been Jekyll and Hyde all year. Then before your bye, Giants, Jets. So as of right now, if I'm being completely objective, I see minimum of 3 more wins, maximum 5 for the next several weeks. Okay? I think that the Lions, the Giants, and the Jets are absolute should wins. And then I look at Denver, New Orleans, and the Chargers as close to 50-50 as you're going to get. But I only feel that way because I know Lane Johnson's on the field. And I think he's that important to this team and this organization. Now, as we transition over to the Sixers stuff, and I'll give you my Eagles keys to the game brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. I'll give you my full football rundown for the weekend a little bit later this hour. But as we transition over to the Sixers portion of our updates, okay? I want to get in touch with something, 2 topics before we get to your guys' thoughts and comments. As you can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Text the show at 609-403-0973. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on a Friday night. When I look at what has been said since Jason Kelce came out and made his thoughts known about Ben Simmons and Philly fans and athletes in Philadelphia, I'm a little surprised at some of the pushback out there. You know, Dwight Howard tweeting what he did. I saw, I think it was Stan Verrett on SportsCenter, you know, really putting down Kelce. You know, I heard Verrett on SportsCenter say, you know, if Jason Kelce can give Ben Simmons some tips about how, you know, that he should make free throws, and maybe Ben Simmons should give Jason Kelce some advice on how to block for Jalen Hurts. You know, Dwight Howard basically telling Jason Kelce to stay in his lane is kind of what he was saying. And I got to tell you guys, I think this is all ridiculous. We live in a world where we have been telling athletes for a very long time, stay in your lane, stick to sports, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden, in the last several years, it's turned into athletes should have the right to speak for themselves. Athletes should have the right to speak up, have their opinion be heard. We've heard for a very long time that, you know, athletes, they have political issues, social issues, charities, causes they want to support and talk about. They want to talk about other things that are not just their sport. So we've been saying this for a very long time. But then all of a sudden, we turn around and now we want to pick and choose when the athletes are allowed to have a voice, on what subjects they're allowed to talk about. You know, Dwight Howard was one of many athletes who were a part of the social justice causes back in 2020. And there were a lot of people who had a lot of things to say about a lot of things going on in our world. And I come from a place where my opinion is this is America. You have an opinion. You have a perspective. There are people who died for you to have that opinion and perspective. That's my take on it. So for Dwight Howard to come out and tell Jason Kelsey to shut up and not talk about this stuff is completely hypocritical. Don't tell Jason Kelsey he shouldn't have an opinion, especially when he's asked by a media person about, Jason Kelsey gave a very honest, upfront, and it was a message that a lot of people, it resonates with them. And it resonated with me yesterday. I wrote about it on the website. And I talked about it on the air yesterday. Jason Kelsey should be allowed to talk about anything he wants without Dwight Howard or Stan Verrett on SportsCenter or anybody else telling him how he needs to not talk about basketball or whatever their perspective is. Don't tell someone to stay in their lane when you've been crying out for athletes to stop being told to stick to basketball. Don't be hypocritical. Now, with all that being said, as I mentioned earlier, the Ben Simmons stuff has taken a different turn. Because now the Ben Simmons stuff has gone from Ben Simmons is a guy who doesn't want to be in Philadelphia to now Ben Simmons is a guy who speaks to his teammates and is opening up and honest about his problems. Apparently, where we are now is that Ben Simmons reported the shoot around today, and he was seen engaged with his teammates. He spoke to Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid and the entire Sixers team and talked about everyone accepting responsibility, including himself, responsibility for things, and then he informed them he is not mentally ready to play and he needs time. To which Tobias Harris came out on Twitter and said, and will respect Ben Simmons' privacy and space during this time. When he's ready, we will embrace our brother with love and handle our business on the court. That is it. That is all. And the reason why Tobias Harris tweeted that is because Ben Simmons did the mature thing, stood up in front of his teammates and said, hey guys, here's the deal. Hey guys, here's what's going on. Hey guys, I need to own this. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. It doesn't justify or excuse any of Ben Simmons' behavior or anything that is going on. But as I told you guys months ago, and I said it multiple times on the air, and I've been very consistent on this. If you look in Ben Simmons' eyes, there was something wrong. He needs help. Now, if Ben Simmons is now getting help, then we're going in the right direction. If Ben Simmons doesn't get help after talking to his teammates, that's another issue. But if Ben Simmons is ready to take the step in the right direction and admit that he has a problem and go get help for it, then I'm okay with where we are right now. How we got here is an absolute disaster and a mess, though. But for Tobias Harris to tweet what he did means that they had an honest conversation, Ben and his teammates, that was needed. They're the men in the room. They're the men who know him better than you and I do. So if they're willing to say that, I'm willing to hit the pause button. Because at the end of the day, here's the reality. If Ben Simmons can get his mindset fixed, then he is way more valuable for the Sixers to trade than he is right now. And I don't know about you, but I don't want Andrew Lang in return for Ben Simmons or Jeff Hornacek or anybody from the Charles Barkley deal. I want more for Ben Simmons in a trade, and so does Daryl Morey. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the show, so keep it tuned here, 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the other side, Bally's Sports Insider Brandon Scoop B. Robinson joins me right here to talk more NBA, Sixers, and Ben Simmons on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwan. We got a big show lined up. We'll react to the Ben Simmons saga. We'll talk Eagles football and Flyers hockey. The sportsbook consigliere Dave Sharapan checks in from Las Vegas with his six-pack of picks. Then we'll hear from three-time All-Big Ten selection linebacker from the University of Iowa, Brad Quast, about his career and his current job as compliance inspector for the NFL. Eagles, Flyers, Sixers talk and more. Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwan, 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN and the mobile app.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. In college football, I'm taking Army plus 3.5 at home versus Wake Forest. Bet all the action in style at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Keep the messages coming in. Of course, you can DM the show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messaging. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can text in at 609-403-0973. And we're also live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. We're joining us right now to talk more about the NBA. He is the man, the myth, the legend. Brandon Scoopy Robinson joins us. Bally Sports NBA insider right here on 97.3 ESPN. My friend, how are you doing as we are now almost a full week into the real NBA season?
I'm chilling. How are you?
I'm doing good. First of all, I'm glad the NBA is back. Let's be realistic, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's actual games on the court, not just stuff in the offseason to chit-chat about the whole time. So,
listen, man, this is a full-time job. This is a season-long job. It doesn't end. So I'm glad to be back in the building and back in the place talking to you, talking all things sports, and we're in there like swimwear.
Well, let's get the most ridiculous stuff out of the way at the beginning, and that is obviously the Ben Simmons stuff has been a hot topic all week. It feels like no matter where you go, someone has something to say about it. But I want to ask you big picture. What do you think the longer term impact of all this stuff is, all this Ben Simmons Sixers stuff?
The way that they decide to agree on the next collective bargaining agreement, because I think when you look at Ben Simmons' situation with Philly, he's not afraid to lose money. And when you look at Anthony Davis' situation was handled a lot differently. He still showed up to work every day. James Harden kind of set the tone because I think that he showed up to training camp and then, you know, he made it known he didn't want to play. I think a lot of players who don't want to be in their situations have a strategy. I think that the Ben Simmons situation has gone on too long and there needs to be a resolution sooner rather than later. But the thing is, the Sixers don't have to trade him. So the longer he sits out, you know, it's just going to be a side show. Kind of like in comparison to Kyrie. Kyrie was the headline last week. He's quiet now. You know, it's Ben Simmons. It's still dragging on.
I think the step in the right direction, as I said earlier before you came on, was today when the report came out from Shams that he talked to his teammates. He got up in front of them and said, look, I got to take some responsibility. My head's not in the right place. And for Tobias Harris to come out and tweet what he did and say, listen, we're behind him and that's it. I'm not going to have this conversation on Twitter. To me, it's at least a step in the right direction, because at the end of the day, you know what is the best way to trade Ben Simmons is for Ben Simmons to improve his trade value.
I agree with you. You know, there are a lot of teams that have gone back and forth with Philadelphia, namely the Timberwolves, who were busy, and ultimately it didn't provide to be fruitful because, you know, D'Angelo Russell was a starting point, and Minnesota was not willing to give that up. We'll see what happens if he plays, because I think you're right. The last time that we've seen Ben Simmons, on tape has been when he played against the Atlanta Hawks in the playoffs, and we're in a new season and he's not played. So I think sometimes people need reminders of who folks are, just because people's attention spans are so short.
You know, I had said after Game 7, I've been very consistent in saying this, that if you looked in Ben Simmons' eyes, something wasn't adding up. And I said very early on, I said this for months, people got mad at me when I said this. I said, look, I don't know if he needs a shrink. I don't know if he needs a psychologist. I don't know if he needs to get a Bible and find Jesus. I don't know what it is, but Ben Simmons needs help. And you know what? I'm hoping that now that he admits my head's not in the right place, I need to get some things figured out, he does get help, because at the end of the day, you know what? Every NBA team wants the best version of Ben Simmons. They don't want the broken Ben Simmons. So to me, when Daryl Morey gets up and says, we're going to wait as long as it takes, to me, Ben Simmons saying, I'm going to take care of this, means that it's going to be a lot easier to trade him.
Well, what a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins he came to bear. He did heal the sick. He did raise the dead. But I don't necessarily think that this is curable from our Heavenly Father, because I think at the end of the day, so much damage has been done. And it's interesting that you bring this up because I was in conversation with somebody in the know, and I'm scrolling through text messages now. This was a text message from I'm scrolling up. This was a conversation that we had in August. And they text me and said, I see your Timberwolves are busy tweets. And they said to me, this was September 3rd. They said to me, they said Daryl Morey doesn't care if Ben sits out. LOL, Daryl is different. And they said this is all embarrassing for Simmons. If he's not dealt by start of camp, he's going to look like an idiot. And so we went on in conversation. They said Daryl's going to sit back and not care. LOL. He really doesn't care. Don't know if you know him, but he's all numbers /analytics /leverage. And then they went on to say Timberwolves would need a third team. And then they said they were speaking specifically about a certain player. And they said said player is the most valuable piece, but he's so young that I don't know if he's enough for Philly where they are right now. And this was September 3rd. And so it's interesting that basically everything that particular person said came to fruition on, what's this? Today is October.
Today's the 22nd of October.
A month and some change later. So, I mean, Daryl Morey is not in a position where he has to trade Ben Simmons. And the only way to kind of get attention and a cry for help, in my opinion, is the whole mental health aspect of it, because I don't want to make light of it, but basically creating a plan in which you can create your exit. But I still don't think that they're fazed by it. And I think the fact that Tobias said what he said was the counter that shows, well, Philly's here for you if you have any hurts. So I kind of feel like it's not going to come in that direction and maybe the way he thought it would by staging my back hurts. Right. If you've been hurt by anything, a car accident, a fall, the lawyers here, you can't get, it's no 1-800 lawyer commercial. Everything that he's tried has been countered. That's how I look at it currently.
We're speaking with NBA insider Brandon Scoopy Robinson from Bally Sports right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Scoop B on Twitter. And by the way, I still need my Scoop B is busy shirt. I need that so I can start wearing that out and about, okay?
Multiple league sources confirm that is what you need.
Because I'm telling you, I will put that shirt in my rotation. That will be in the shirt rotation.
Yes,
the Scoop B is busy with the at Scoop B on Twitter right under it. That's the shirt.
Text me your mailing address, and I will reach out to my folks at Wooter. I'm actually wearing a Wooter. They actually create shirts for Floyd Mayweather's Money Team. I'm wearing a Money Team hoodie now, created by Wooter.
Yes, you are.
I'll send you one in the mail later this coming week.
Well, the one thing we know about you, you are a man of fashion, so I can always rely on you to be putting the right thing out front. Okay, but back to the basketball.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the Timberwolves are one of the teams that's been interested consistently. My question has been, is part of what's going to happen moving forward is, are we going to get to a point where it's after that deadline in December where you can start trading guys who were signed in the offseason, and there's a team that's maybe 8 or 18 and they thought they would be better, or they're a team that's maybe 18-8 that starts saying, hey, we need something here. And maybe that's where a team like the Timberwolves gets that third or fourth team, because what was that, 4 or 5 teams that Harden got traded with?
Yeah, I mean, the way it was told to me was that Ben was actually traded to Houston, and then they turned around and said, psych. I heard that back in May, somebody who was directly tied to thought processes. I have to watch what I say, but I'll just say that the person who shared that with me is very tied within the Sixers organization. And they said to me that in the 25th hour, Houston was like, psych, and it didn't happen, and that Ben was actually notified. And so, in this situation, with a third or fourth team, like you mentioned, the Timberwolves, it always was that. I shared that conversation that I had with someone, a separate person, not the same person I'm talking about previously, but they said in order for that to happen, it would have to be a third team that Minnesota would have to involve. And the thing about it is, I actually think Minnesota has potential to be good this year. So the fact that they did not just jump on, okay, I'm going to get rid of D'Lo to get Ben Simmons, I think that was good.
Really quick, if I could jump in real quick, I want to ask you about that specifically. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns are very good friends, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't it be smart for the Timberwolves to not trade Cat's good friend to keep the harmony with Karl-Anthony Towns?
Those close to Towns share that same sentiment with me.
Okay, so I'm not crazy to think that way then.
No, like I don't know if you remember, like when Brooklyn made that move, it was essentially a sign and trade. Russell for Kevin Durant in 2019. Originally, it wasn't supposed to be that way. He was trying to find his way to Minnesota, and I tweeted that like that summer, and I had conversation with those in the know that was what it was going to be, and it ended up being it ended up going a different way, and with still the same result. I don't think Carl would be happy if Russell was traded, and I know that prior to D'Angelo Russell being shipped, there were questions about future. And as of now, I know Carl is happy. So I would imagine you would want to keep him happy. But I also know that the three of them, D'Angelo, Carl, and Ben Simmons, have a relationship. And I know they're trying to make that happen. But I don't see that happening without you giving up an Anthony Edwards, a Jaden McDaniels, and or a D'Angelo Russell. And I'll add this. If I can make a comparison, like I made the Ben Simmons comparison as it related to just his presentation and showing up to training camp and whatnot, this situation with who goes where with Simmons reminds me so much of Anthony Davis eventually coming to Los Angeles. If you remember my reporting back in 2019, the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Lonzo Ball, as well as Brandon Ingram conversations were anything between a three-team trade with New Orleans, Orlando, and LA. There was conversation about Ivica Zubac going. There was conversations about everything but the kitchen sink. And if they could, they would have included Luke Walton. Like it got ridiculous. This reminds me somewhat of the early stages of that. If I recall, I remember saying back in like October 2019 that the Lakers were looking to grab that. And then ultimately they started to legitimately talk about it heavily. And it was legitimately discussed like December, January. And at the trading deadline, they ended up firing Dell Demps. This situation reminds me a little bit of the early stages of the Lakers getting or going after Anthony Davis, and they eventually pulled it off that offseason.
You're also the man who had LeBron going to the Lakers before anybody else, NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson at Scoop B on Twitter, NBA insider for Bally Sports, joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Before I let you go, I want to hit on a couple things that are not Sixers Ben Simmons related, if that's okay.
Right. I got time.
Yeah. So Tuesday night, the Bucks, they get their rings, they go out there, they have one of those games that, Giannis is just like, this is my world, you're all just living in it kind of games. And I got to admit, I've been reading the book Giannis by Miran Fader, and I got to tell you, I've gone from liking Giannis to loving Giannis, because to me, he is everything you want, your idols and your athletes to be at this point in time. And I don't know if enough people are giving the Bucks a chance to repeat as champs, because I just think people forget, how old is Giannis? He's not old. He's not like he's like 34 years old. This dude is literally still growing and improving. And there's a part of me that wonders, if Giannis keeps ascending the way he is, he may be the dominant force in the Eastern Conference, not just now, but for years to come.
Is that a question or a statement?
A little bit of both.
My response to that is yes, I agree. And I think part of the reason why Giannis does not get that just due is because I think last regular season, everybody thought it was going to be the Sixers or the Nets in the East and the Lakers out West. And we had a Suns-Bucks finals. And if you really sit back and you recall last offseason, Drew Holiday and Chris Paul joining their respective teams were one of the most underrated moves of the offseason, and they could have gone to either team. But more specifically, I'll say this, the Chris Paul to Milwaukee was something that was being pushed behind the scenes. Drew Holiday ended up finding his way out there, but I think what's going on is smaller market teams, and everybody just thinks that LeBron and Kevin Durant are the only two superstars in the NBA. And that's just not so. But I also think that there are a lot of people, particularly players, that don't directly connect with Giannis culturally.
Right.
And I'll leave that there. But I'll say that I think that Giannis is not kissing rings to get in his situation, and he ultimately did it his way, like Frank Sinatra, and that's to be commended. But also, if I'm the Bucks, I like the fact that they're paying attention to everybody else, because you can slip under the radar. I mean, I know role players who told me that they would have, and this is like before the playoffs started, that they would have rather have liked to play with the Bucks than playing with Brooklyn, and because they had questions about certain things, and they said the Bucks or Miami. So I think that says something, where you have guys who quietly want to play for those teams, and everybody was paying attention to Philly and Milwaukee. Philly and Brooklyn throughout the course of last season. And I think when you look at Milwaukee, they have the chance to repeat. They have the chance to go toe-to-toe with the great ones. And to be honest with you, like, aside, Miami got that game off last night when they shellacked Milwaukee the other day. If I'm not mistaken, Miami beat them last night, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like by what, 20, 30 points? Like, that was the revenge game from the playoffs, because I think everybody looked at Miami Heat in the bubble and just thought that, they didn't have a chance, or rather Milwaukee didn't have a chance against Miami in the playoffs. And not only did they win, they swept them. And Miami retooled this offseason. But I really do think that Milwaukee's biggest challenge out East is themselves.
All right. So we've talked a lot this year in offseason and this week and this NBA world that we're in now. Bucks, Nets, Sixers. You just mentioned the Heat, the Lakers, okay, the Suns. But give me a team in each conference that people aren't talking about enough.
I was chatting up with Spencer Dinwiddie last night about the Wizards and how people, well, my question, and this is an interview that will drop within the next week or so, but we basically discussed the fact that everybody pays attention to Boston, Brooklyn, Philly, and Milwaukee. And Milwaukee are the champs. But I really do think when you look at the Washington Wizards, I think they're a sleeper. I think they're a sleeper because Bradley Beal now has some weapons next to him. And I think one of the biggest weapons, and I spent some time with him a couple of weeks ago when I was in town, is Kyle Kuzma. That's my dude back from the Lakers days. And spent some time with him after practice. And he's really revved up to really just do what he needs to do. And he now really and truly, he has his own team. Like, I think next to Bradley Beal, like, it's still Bradley Beal's team, but like, everybody who leaves that Lakers organization does well elsewhere, specifically Brandon Ingram. who put on 15 pounds of muscle this past offseason and is doing work. So, when I look at the Wizards, I think that's the team that's definitely in the hunt. I think they're in position 5, somewhere between 5 and 8, but I think that they can grow. And I feel the same way about the Chicago Bulls. I think that the Chicago Bulls definitely added some pieces. As I was reporting back in January and February, Lonzo Ball was the person of interest, and they almost got him, at the trade deadline. And the thing that was smart about Chicago was that they waited, because Kobe White was really the deciding factor in that whole ordeal. And, now they got to keep him. They didn't have to shift him to New Orleans, and now he can shift to a natural 2-guard scoring position. And they added Alex Caruso. So from a shooting percentage perspective, I think he's going to do well from the 3-point line and defensively. But, Zach LaVine has the help he needs. I know over the last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time with Zach through my partnership with Zenni Optical, the official glasses sponsor of the Chicago Bulls. We've really sat just about him not getting his all-star selection. He was selected this season or last season, and just not having health, having help. You know what I'm saying? But now
I know what you're saying.
The focus is about his health. Can he stay healthy throughout the course of this season? The Bulls have it, and not just that. They got Vooch. I thought that was one of the most underrated moves at the trading deadline last season. So I think the Bulls and the Wizards are two teams that you really got to pay attention to, man. They're no chump teams.
Yeah, I already have Kyle Kuzma on all my fantasy basketball teams, and I think that I believe I have Lonzo Ball on all of them as well. Then it's because I personally believe in the Billy Donovan Lonzo Ball connection that can happen, and I believe in Kyle Kuzma, like you said, just flourishing in Washington. I love the way you brought those two up. For more basketball insights, at Scoop B on Twitter, at Scoop B on Instagram. Don't just follow, hit the alert button so you know exactly what's going on at all times, and check out his conversation with Sean Marion. Marion has some very poignant things to say about the Ben Simmons situation, all that and more with Bally Sports. He is NBA insider Brandon Scoop B Robinson. My friend, I always appreciate you jumping on. Awesome insights as always, and we'll be keeping an eye on that feed.
Hey, sources tell me that I'm supposed to tell you, thank you for the opportunity to always be myself.
Well, I appreciate you jumping on the show. How about that?
Multiple leak sources confirm.
Take care, my friend.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Great insights from the man, the myth, the legend, Brandon Scoop B Robinson here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We will get you the Football Friday picks, my Eagles pick for the weekend, and more next with me, Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Oh, yeah!
The Sixers host the Brooklyn Nets. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's play-by-play home for the 76ers.
This week's featured bet is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. In college football, I'm taking Army plus 3.5 at home versus Wake Forest. Bet all the action in style at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hi, I'm Tony DeSalle, President and CEO of Crest Savings Bank. As a community bank with deep roots in the area, it's only natural to expand in the community. At our new financial center in Cape May Courthouse, you'll find deposit, lending, and wealth management solutions, all delivered with our unique brand of personal service. For over 100 years, we've believed that from deep roots grow strong branches. Visit us in person or online at crestsavings.bank.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Get in zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to
GMF approval.
You've probably heard that used cars are currently in great demand, but then some dealers go ahead with ridiculously low offers for your trade. Well, at Bennett Chevy, we don't care what others tell you. This month only, our offers start at a minimum $8,000. Even if your trade's towed to our lot, we'll give you a minimum $8,000 for any old clunker, rattle trap, or rust bucket towards any pre-owned vehicle in stock. And if we pay a minimum $8,000 for junk, just imagine how much more Bennett will pay for a nice, clean, good running vehicle. Just grab your title or payment book and get to Bennett Chevy to get the most for your trade. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. Need to get out of a lease early? Bennett is your all brands lease return center. No strings, no obligations. Just the best offers you'll find anywhere. And a non-commissioned sales staff paid based on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night. Of course, our football weekend preview being brought to you by Bally Sportsbook Inside. FanDuel Sportsbook Inside. Bally's Atlantic City football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the action and style this football season at the state-of-the-art FanDuel Sportsbook just off the boardwalk at Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Just to recap, we went 2-1 on the picks last night. Last weekend, 4-2 in the college football, 3-3 on the NFL. So here we go with the weekend. First of all, keys to the Eagles game. Number one, the Philadelphia Eagles have to run the ball. The Raiders have a horrible run defense. You can run on them. If they run on them, they can win this game. But I don't have the belief they are going to win this game. So I think the Eagles end up losing the game 28-27 to the Raiders. I think that the Eagles get away from what makes them tick. Other football picks for the weekend. I love Army at home, plus 3.5 versus Wake Forest. Wake Forest 1-5 on the road as a betting favorite, while Army is 7-2 against the spread versus Power 5 schools. I also like Wisconsin losing at Purdue. Purdue is plus 3.5 at home. East Carolina, they're 3-1 against the spread as an underdog this year. They are plus 3.5 at Houston. I am also rocking with the Lions losing to the Rams by more than 16.5. Eagles cover the 3-point spread, and Saints and Seahawks over 42.5. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great weekend.
Looking for insider info?